It's everywhere you look. AI this, AI that, AI is coming for your jobs, and all of that is actually true. However, how is AI going to impact the real estate industry? I don't think you guys are prepared for what the answer really is. But first, my name is Tiffany. I'm a loan officer here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm also a nerd for all things personal finance, AI, technology, you name it, I've got an interest in it. So I'm going to continue to bring videos like this to you guys so you guys know what to expect for the future ahead, as well how you guys can get ahead of the curve and actually start building wealth now before it's being made by people you've never even heard of. So let's get into the video. So first things first, it's important to note that AI, even though it's very prevalent in the top of our minds, it's actually very much at the beginning of its reign. If you think about it, ChatGPT only started getting its funding back in 2016, which means it hasn't even hit a decade of it being operational. And it's actually only at the surface of what it's able to do. In fact, there's been many talks of ChatGPT improving upon itself, getting to the next level of AI, as well as other companies that are starting to come out and start forming their own AIs. I think everyone assumes ChatGPT is AI, but ChatGPT is just one variant of it. In fact, there's many different types of AI depending on what your industry is, depending on what your expertise is, and depending on what you really want the AI to be good at. It's almost like a robot. It's not the same for each function. It's just we've become so used to having ChatGPT be our main source of, AI that we just assume that it is AI. Kind of like Kleenex. You don't know what else to call a Kleenex other than a Kleenex, but that's just one variant of a tissue. There's actually plenty of other brands of tissues. I think with that being said, we're just now starting to see AI start to come into fruition of what it's able to do. In fact, you're starting to see wild reports of what AI is even starting to do right now in its infancy. Like, there was a doctor back in Houston that actually used AI and used robots to perform a surgery so that he could sit and perform it at his desk, and then the robot was actually operating on the person. That is just an extreme case, but that is just an example of the kind of replacement that AI is going to be doing here in the future. Like, it's going to replace not only the boring admin jobs that I think everyone was kind of aware AI might replace, like support task, admin task, assistant task, all of those things. It's coming for big jobs too, like lawyers, doctors, like any profession is susceptible to being integrated with AI. So we are just starting to see AI's reign of what it's able to do and its impact here in the economy. And as it's continuing to grow, we're starting to see more and more uses of it, which I feel might make it better, in some cases more cost effective than an actual human. It's even been reported by Goldman Sachs, CNN. They're saying that artificial intelligence could replace the equivalent of 300 million full-time jobs. So, of course, as AI grows, there's going to be more opportunities to grow in AI-related fields. So if you're someone who loves technology, this might be a great time for you. But if you're someone who's not very versed in technology, this might be a bad time for you. And that same report from Goldman Sachs, they basically draw the analogy to when Uber took over the taxi industry. Consider the introduction of GPS technology and platforms like Uber. Suddenly, knowing all the streets in London have much less value, and so incumbent drivers experience large wage cuts in response of around 10% according to our research. The result was lower wages, not fewer drivers, meaning that the number of drivers that were operating in the London area did not decrease, but their wages did, because now you had things like Uber around that had basically cheapened the experience of a taxi. If you think about it, when Uber first came, their whole gimmick was to charge low to get people so accustomed to the product that they became dependent on it, and so they got used to those low prices. Used to be able to get a ride for like $10. I don't know if anyone remembers that time. And they became so dependent on it that now they were able to gradually increase their prices and start becoming profitable because people had already become accustomed to it. But that ended up damaging the taxi industry because they now had to compete with Uber, especially when they first introduced and it was like $10 a ride. The cost of a taxi went down. As AI is starting to integrate into our society and into our day-to-day lives, you're going to see things decrease in general. The last line of that report says, over the next few years, generative AI is likely to have similar effects on a broad set of creative tasks. Things that are not usually considered as top of mind in the business, likely to be replaced or at the very least subsidized by AI. There's also been a report from CNN that 41% of companies worldwide plan to reduce workforces by AI. by the year 2030, which if you think about it is crazy because we're in 2025 as I'm filming this right now. That means in 5 years, 41% of people are out of a job, which is crazy because what are they going to do for work now? You either get on the AI boom and start becoming an asset to AI companies or figure out where they need assistance. With that being said, kind of like I mentioned before, your efforts are now being valued as less because there's now a surplus of people who are looking for that same job or looking for that same opportunity. That ties into basically the first point of how I think AI is going to change the real estate landscape is that there's going to be less income for people to qualify for to buy a house. If things are already bleak as it is, it's going to get worse with AI because the value at which businesses give to employees is going to decrease as a result of AI being introduced into the marketplace. I think you're seeing it now. You're seeing some companies already taking that plunge, but like this report from CNN says, 41% of companies plan to reduce their workforce by the year 2030. So when you have 5 years to figure out how are you going to work with AI to become an asset to another company. In that same report that was from Goldman Sachs, you have now not only have to learn a new skill, but you also have to get paid less for it. So that is a huge factor that I think is going to play into the real estate industry is that there's just less funds available for people to buy homes. So what all things considered, you're going to see less income that people can use to actually qualify for houses. And that wouldn't be the scariest thing in the world if we weren't already in an affordability crisis as it was. In fact, 77% of US households cannot afford a median priced home. And this is according to a survey that was done by Realtor.com that shows that the average median income in America is $83,000, roughly $83,758. The average income needed to buy a starter median priced home is $119,461, which means there is about a $40,000 gap yearly for people that want to buy a normal starter home and what the average starter income is in America. Which means most people cannot afford to buy homes as it is. In fact, there is another study done by the National Association of Home Builders that says nearly half of U.S. households cannot afford a $250,000 home. Now, mind you, I don't know what it's like in most of the U.S., but $250,000 here in Las Vegas gets you a condo at best. Like, it doesn't even get you a townhome. Townhomes are like $350,000 to $400,000 as it is. So $250,000 is getting you a condo probably in a very not so great area. And most people cannot afford even that. What's really interesting here is that there's already an affordability crisis in the real estate industry as it is. And this is now going to make things worse if you consider that businesses are going to start paying people less money in order to do the exact same jobs that they were doing before. This is all turning into pretty much a tide pool of how are people going to be able to afford homes? How are people going to be able to participate in the real estate industry and build wealth through real estate if it's seeming like it's out of grasp for most people? I have an answer, and it's going to shock you. The answer is 3D printed homes. I know, hear me out though, because the cost of buying a home is only going to get worse from here. If you think about it, the goods that are needed to build a traditional home are only going to go up. Lumber is being exported from Canada, which is about to see a 25% tariff if these tariffs should pass here in the nearby future, which means not only is it going to be harder to build a home, but it's about to get much more expensive to build a home. So the houses that we know it is not going to be the best way to go about things. In fact, it's probably going to be only for like the really rich, I believe, in the nearby future, because those homes cost so much in order to be built that it's not reasonable to pass off those fees to the average American. We can't even afford them as it is. So as things continue to get more expensive and wages come down, there's going to be a gap there on what people can actually afford. And buying a home that's made of classic materials is likely going to get pricey so that the average person is priced out of buying a home altogether. So 3D printed homes, I think, are the solution. What's interesting about 3D printed homes is that it costs only about $10,000 to $35,000 to build, just like the walls and the floor, the bones of it. You still need to get like plumbing done. You'll still need to get like electrical heating, all of those elements that are already in a new home. but it's going to cost you significantly less because the materials that they use to build these 3D printed homes is not quite as cost effective as buying a normal like lumber, wood, blah 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 blah. A fully finished 3D printed home with plumbing and electrical and wiring can cost anywhere in the neighborhood of $150,000 to $500,000. Now, I think $500,000 is if you are looking at like a really huge, massive home. Like, I don't think that's going to be standard, especially since it only costs about $10,000 to $35,000 to build the walls and the flooring. But I think what you're going to see is that this is going to become the more cost-effective option. I think you could qualify more people on $100,000 to $200,000 than $250,000, $300,000, $400,000. And I also think too, what's going to be interesting if this is able to be done is that these homes can actually be built in days. A normal house takes months to build because there's construction, there's, waiting for materials to get in, there's weather that plays into it if you go too long, all of these things. So a normal house takes about a year to be built. A 3D printed home can be printed in days and requires minimal human oversight, which again is playing into the whole AI, like, the workforce is going to go down, your job's getting replaced by AI and 3D printing for the people who work in the construction industry. But I think that that's just the nature of where we're going. I don't think it's financially feasible to pass off those costs to consumers anymore, which is what most home builders do. They pass off the cost of, construction and lumber and materials to the consumer when they go and build that house, which is why homes that are newly built take so much longer to appreciate because they're usually sitting at the top of the market in that area as it is. Which is why if you're someone who's trying to buy for appreciation, buying new build only makes sense if you're buying like in phase 1. But if you're buying in a later phase, it's going to take so much longer for that property to appreciate because you're paying basically for the builder to be able to go build houses. But if you can have a 3D printed home and it takes hours, maybe days to be done, and it requires very minimal human oversight, that means you could pretty much let it rip and continue to build on areas that are underdeveloped, like places like the Midwest, places that don't have a ton of homes as it is. Like, I think that this is a great opportunity to start building in all of those areas and start using the land that we already have available to us that it just takes too long in a normal house building cycle in order to build. I think you could wrap that time up exponentially, bring the cost down, because now as supply increases, demand will somewhat level out. There's not going to be such a rush to buy homes. And I think that it's a reasonable expectation given where I think wages are going to be able to buy a 3D printed home and then work your way up as you build, equity and you build up, appreciation to go on into the next 3D printed home until eventually you end up in a normal home, even if that's what you want to do, which I think is interesting. I feel like 3D printed homes are now made with concrete and that lasts up to 50 plus years. And there's actually a community in Texas that already has a community of 3D printed homes. And here's what they have to say about that development in their area. Icon is the company that created this community out in Georgetown, Texas, which is a community right outside the Austin area, if you didn't know. And it's called the Wolf Ranch Community. And it consists of 100 3D printed homes built between 2022 and 2024. And each house is 1 story, contains 3 to 4 bedrooms, and possesses concrete walls that can fend off termites and Texas's tough climate. Icon accomplished this feat by using the Vulcan printer, which spans a width of 45 feet and weighs nearly 5 tons. So this community is already a guinea pig among other communities of what 3D printed homes can actually do. And what's interesting that they note here is that the concrete walls are actually helping fend off Texas's really tough climate. In fact, in case you didn't know, Texas has a really interesting climate because they actually get just as hot as, say, a Vegas, but their humidity levels are extremely tough. So if you're someone who struggles with extreme heat, being in Texas, being in Nevada can be very difficult for you. But they're saying that these homes are built so well and these concrete walls can fend off pretty much anything that these houses can withstand Texas's extreme weather, which I think is pretty amazing because as we all know, the world is getting hotter, nothing's really going down in heat, and we're starting to see more extreme cases of weather in general. So if these 3D printed homes can actually withstand that temperature and withstand that pressure, then I think this would be huge, not only just in the sense that these homes are more inexpensive than a normal built home, but these are actually going to last longer, and these are actually built for today's climate instead of some of these homes, especially if you buy resale, that were built like 10, 20, 30 years ago, maybe even 50 years ago, depending on what area of the country you live in, that aren't able to really adjust to the climate that we currently have going on with like climate change and just the general rising in temperatures that we're seeing in the country. So I think this would be a huge opportunity for us to have homes that are actually sustainable and that actually help us live in these extreme temperatures that we're in, and allow us to have that at a fraction of the cost of a normal built home. So in conclusion, real estate's going to be impacted by AI as well, either directly or indirect, in the form of wages that are being cut for the average person, as well as just AI coming and taking over industries as we know it. I think that everything is going to get cheaper and it's going to get faster with AI, but there is going to be a curve there because there is going to obviously be people impacted by AI and the changing of the climate that it's going to be doing here within the nearby future. So I think that the way that we buy, the way that we sell, the way that we look at real estate as a whole is going to change just in general. I think the way that we build and sell is going to change, whether you're in real estate, whether you make clothes, whether whatever industry you're in, it's going to be shaken up by AI just because of the nature of what AI is going to do within the next 10, 15 years. I think that if you can get ahead of the curve now, and if you're someone who can develop 3D printed homes, or you are someone who can come in and help with the infrastructure needed to get these houses approved by, normal financing, then you are going to be the person who gets rich. But if you are someone who holds off on this AI movement and you think it's just a fad and you are tempted to basically turn your other cheek when it comes to AI, I do think you're going to be left behind. I do think that you are going to be impacted in the form of your income. I think that it's good to kind of adjust yourself to AI now, start learning about AI, especially if you're in the real estate industry, and see how you can be an asset to those who have the means, basically. That is it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you would like to see more content like this or more journalism type content, please make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!